equipment monitoring. Griff, you've heard all my stories, so if you need to take a nap, go ahead and take a nap. We were at the same conference a few minutes ago. Back in the early days, when we first started the internet, we were running out of IP addresses. So an IP address is all the little things and how you talk to the internet. We were running out. I mean, we didn't think that far ahead. We were pretty stupid engineers. But we came up with this committee called the IPv6 committee, and we developed a new algorithm so there would be unlimited IP addresses. And I remember during the meeting, one of the guys was joking around. He said, "Oh, we'll have so many IP addresses that I could even have one for my dog collar." And I kind of laughed. I'm like, "That's cute," but oh man, was he right? So everything in this room, that projector, you can probably hook that camera up, my iPhone, your iPhone, that television, that monitor up there, they all have an IP address. Now imagine the amount of data that's going through those things. So that's the way that GE and Hitachi and Siemens can sit back and sell these large contracts to these folks saying, I can promise you to 99.999% that this thing is not going to break down. How much money would you pay me to do this? Because they've got the algorithms that are looking at this. It's monitoring the health of this every day, and they're actually come in and make really, really good predictions. So GE does that on a major scale. Griff's company did that as a major scale, but oh my goodness, think about the local opportunities to be able to come back and do the same thing for the region. And then, of course, personalized services. I shared the story earlier today is that, much to my wife's chagrin, about everything I do is automated through an AI agent today, from the time I get up in the morning to the time I write my blog to going out and getting my fishing boat ready to go out. I mean, I just get these little reminders because I'm old and stupid that I need to do A, B, and C before I do X, Y, and Z. But these type of personal assistants are getting more widespread. Probably half the room has an Alexa, or you've used Siri, or the Google one. They're just getting ready to be on steroids. You haven't seen anything yet. So, but it's amazing now that the amount of data that you can get off of these things, but the localization, personalization angle of those is what's coming up next. So you're not just going to be relying on, coming back saying, I want the latest news from Fox or MSNBC. You'll be able to come back and plug in and do the local news sources. There are AI avatars out there now that you can't tell are not newscasters. Okay, they're pulling the news out, sorting it, and reading to you. That's kind of scary in some regards, but it goes back to the right due diligence and making sure that you've got the right guardrails in place. So why is all this happening? Okay, we talked a little bit about explosion of data. There's so much data out there right now. We talked about scalable compute. That's NVIDIA. Okay, you can rent these things for penny on the dollar from AWS or Google or Microsoft. And then open algorithms. Now, I think Google's the smartest company in the world for many reasons. But they set up this website called Kaggle, K-A-G-G-L-E. And what this is companies pay Google to put really hard problems out there. And these really hard problems go something like this. I want to take all the oncology data that relates to this form of melanoma, and I want to come up with possible ways to slice it and dice it and come up with new algorithms. Now, they pay the winners, and the winning team could be anywhere from 50,000, and they just had one for $2 billion. And of course, these kids come up with incredible things. Now, all of those algorithms are out there. You can go pull them out yourself, use them today if you want to. But why does Google do this? They hire the winning teams. So they look for the best and the brightest to come out and do this. So you could basically have someone from the Allegheny Highlands go out to a Gaggle type piece and they could be working for Google next week. Or we could do the same type of approach, think about how we build that infrastructure, and they could stay here in the Highlands and help make us the next successful type of companies. But all of these things are in place. So when we talk about, is this hype or is this hope? I'm working on a project right now in Saudi Arabia. We're building a virtual hospital, which is kind of fascinating in itself. Imagine a complex about like the size of this community college that supports 136 hospitals around the country. And within this, we have radiology, we have labs, they do cyberknife surgery remotely. They still have a physician on site at the attending hospital, but a lot of that's done centrally. But they are using a lot of the technology that we're building, that we did in like Torque on autonomous trucks, to come back and do a lot of these things. Let me give you an example. Now, Monday I have to go see my dermatologist, and my dermatologist will pick up that little glass and start giving me the exam and say, oh, that looks a little different, and he does a really good job. His name's Doc Holliday, go figure. But within that, it's still a very manual process of how he's doing it. So when we built the autonomous trucks for Torque that the Daimler just recently purchased, these things have an incredible amount of technology, something called computer vision. Okay, within this, we have radar, LiDAR, stereo cameras, mono cameras, and they're all going into these NVIDIA computers, picking up data and making real-time decisions based on what's around them, along with mapping data, traffic data, and weather data. So imagine all of those computations coming back in microseconds. Well, the folks in Riyadh said, well, we could use that same thing for dermatology. So now, instead of you having that doctor coming in and doing the scope, you can go in a room and al fresco, they'll take these cameras and shoot you, and all of a sudden the AI takes over and it comes back and says, yeah, maybe that doesn't look exactly right. They've got a 30% success hit rate over the dermatologist in the country. So that's an example of how the technology will get there. So here's some of the things from the medical world that I pulled out recently, because we were doing some stuff at the Fraley Biomedical Institute. You see everybody from Yale to the JAMA to NIH, how they're using this technology today. This slide's 6 months old. You go out and did the same thing for advanced manufacturing, forestry products, transportation and rail. You'd see a similar type of thing out there in terms of how they're using the technology. One of the questions that I always ask, I'm kind of skeptical by life. It's like, show me the money. Whenever I come back and want to know if something's real or not, I usually go back to the Gartner hype cycle. And what the hype cycle is, if you ever read Crossing the Chasm, that book is based on something called the division of fusion theory. This is Gartner's example of this. So when you see things climbing up that thing, that's when the technologies are in high motion. When it goes down in that third column, that's called the trough of disillusionment. Okay, and what happens there is there's so much hype about it that people don't know what's real, and that's when you usually have the big consolidation. So the reason I pulled this one out today is not so much of the hype cycle, they're all looking exactly the same, but it's the colors of the dots. If you go back and compare this to the 2023 hype cycle, the dots are very different. Okay, it goes back to that how things are progressing at rapid rates. So last year when I looked at this, most things were the dark blue. A lot of them have moved down to the light blue or to the white right now, which means they're moving into market very, very fast. So when I go back and say, look, we need to really think about how we're going to address this in terms of our businesses, our workforce development, new industry, this is the reason. This thing is in hyper growth mode right now. So you'll see some of the things out there that I talked about, edge AI, prompt engineering. See the yellow ones? Like the artificial general intelligence? That should scare you. But the nice thing is it's 10 years out, it's yellow. This is when AI has consciousness and when it thinks for itself. So this is when you need the 3 laws of robotics. Last year it wasn't on the chart. That's how far it's progressed in 1 year. So the new chart's coming out next month. It's going to be interesting to see how far things go, but don't take my word for it. Look at the industry and where it's going. These are the hot topics right now. There are several of the engines out there. We talked about ChatGPT. There's Claude. Elon Musk is Grok. That's a very good one. Meta's got one. I'll show you a slide in a minute. There are thousands of them out there, and they're all tailored for specific purposes. And what's really interesting, there's a bank, a CFO that was in a bank in Roanoke Valley who was a subject matter expert. Her name is Kim Snyder. She's in you look at Inc. magazine, she's 50 fastest growing female executives in the world right now. Her company's on Inc.'s fast list. Kim knew everything about banking. I mean, she nails it. She wows me with her banking knowledge. But she's like, I think I can take a lot of what I've learned and apply it to AI and make my banks more successful. And so she started doing that about 3 years ago. She's up to 150 customers right now and doing gangbusters. But see, that's the opportunity. Kim wasn't in Boston, Charlotte, New York City. She was in Roanoke, Virginia, and she created this. She'll have one of the hottest startups that'll exit. So if it can happen there, it can happen here. Great ideas. Think about how you take them and take the technology to the next level. Let's talk about data. Data is growing at an incredible rate. So back when we were building stuff for GE, it was in the gigabyte and terabyte range. See the bottom of something called a yottabyte? Anybody ever heard of a yottabyte before? It's a really big number, okay? So right now, we're not at the yottabyte stage, but we're getting there fast. So current estimates, there are 64 zettabytes of data out there right now. That's the one right above a yottabyte. 90% of the data that we're seeing in the world was created in the last 2 years. Think about that. Oh, and every 2 years, it's going to double in size. While I've been sitting here, every second that I've been talking, Amazon has closed 79 transactions worldwide. That happens 7 by 24. About 24 petabytes of data will be loaded to YouTube before I go to bed tonight. These are the trends out there. So that makes it a data-rich environment for a lot of these folks to take advantage of. So when you think about the impact of AI, it's going to have pretty big, 4.4 trillion. If you look at productivity gains, most of the service sectors in Virginia are saying 20 to 30% gains with the infancy of where it's at today, and then about a 70% adoption. So if you ever worried about things being adopted, I mean, personal computers weren't adopted this fast. So a lot of companies are picking them up, they're coming back, building things out, and taking advantage of it. And what's really nice is that the technology is to a point right now that you don't have to rely on Microsoft or Google or Amazon. There's these things called the RAG models where you can actually build these things on your own computers that are just basically specific to your business, to your community. Ken, I was talking about John Hull earlier. John does economic development in the Roanoke Valley. I'm like, I want to take John, sit him down for 2 weeks, take all of his knowledge out from his brain and create an AI model. And John's like, you'll put me out of business. I'm like, that's not the intent. We'll always need John, but we could simplify a lot of the things that he knows in terms of like contacts, or being able to come back and say, this site for this location. Or if you want to build this type of data center, you're going to need this amount of water and this amount of power. So those are the type of things that are really interesting and provide a good opportunity for us moving forward. Now, Virginia, we're the king of the data centers. Now, if you go up to Northern Virginia or you read the Washington Post or listen to any of the DC radios, this is always a big controversial topic. You have actors standing up against them in Warrington, and it's just a mess. And a lot of folks say, well, of course, Northern Virginia, why wouldn't they have data centers, federal government? That's not the reason that Northern Virginia has all the data centers. Yeah, federal government helps, but back in the day, a lot of people in this room can relate to this. Remember companies like MCI, the long distance company, and La Bell and BBM Planet? Back when we created the internet, there were two major interconnection points. One was called May East, and one was called May West. May West was on the campus of Stanford University. May East was at Boston Commons in Arlington, where the National Science Foundation is today. And that was the interconnection point for the internet. So if you really wanted to jump in high speeds, that's where you were. So that's the reason a lot of these companies clustered around Northern Virginia and in the Silicon Valley around Stanford University. So when they built these things out, of course, it starts to blossom. Now, in a lot of industries, people want to be close to data centers. Why? Well, if you're a banker, you want to have the closest possible connection because of latency. A millisecond makes all the difference in the world if you're doing a transaction. So in manufacturing, if you're doing near real time, you want to be close to the hub. So a lot of the data centers that are powering the Northern Virginia region are supporting the government, but they're also supporting the defense industry. But the nice thing about this is, yay, we are the leader in that area, and a lot of people sit back and they have this bioreaction. I don't want one of those in my backyard. These things create a lot of jobs. So when I was at Microsoft, we looked at, we were building out our data strategy, so once Steve took all my money, he put me out to say where we're going to build these things. And we had a strategy. The strategy went something like this. Let's go to the old Bonneville dam projects, TVA, hydroelectric plants, because A, it was cheap power and cheap land. So we were going to put one in Christiansburg to take advantage of Claytor Lake, but we ran into a small sinkhole problem and we had to cancel that one. So we moved it to Mecklenburg County. If you talk to folks in Mecklenburg County right now, that's a pretty successful site for them. Every data center will employ about 100 people in the data center itself. These people make over $100,000 a year. There's usually 250 other jobs that support that data center. Welders, plumbers, maintenance type workers, okay? So Mecklenburg County has one that Microsoft has. Microsoft just signed a lease for 9 more. So do the math. So if you look at their tax revenue right now, they're generating a lot of money out of this. Plus, a lot of businesses want to get close to them, okay? So the reason that Microsoft wanted the one in Christiansburg, we were going to support Greensboro, Winston-Salem, High Point, and Roanoke. And when they moved to Mecklenburg County, it's to support the Research Triangle Park. So they want to be close to those type of areas, which kind of brings me to this area. And are you strategically located or what? To be able to run up down the corridor of the interstate and up and down the Shenandoah Valley to the Roanoke Valley. But with these, I don't want to give you false hope. These are power-hungry monsters. They take a lot of power. And the ones I'm seeing that most successful right now is just not taking power off the grid. It's a mixed approach. So they're looking for ones that are close to pipelines, so they can use natural gas. If you look at Elon's outfit right outside of Memphis, it's all natural gas based. A lot want to be around renewables that are both wind, solar, and the grid, because it takes the power companies a long time to shift, to build this infrastructure out. Now, luckily for you guys, because is it West Rock now? It'll always be West Waco to me. But they've got a lot of power right there. It takes a lot to run those mills. So, being able to plug into that infrastructure could be something golden for you guys. Also, most of the time they want about, a small data center will take up about 50 acres, a large data center will take up about 100 acres. Okay? And it goes back to when people flip out on these things, it's like, oh, yeah, all the water it takes. A lot of the companies like Google, they are reclaiming the water to put it back in so it's not such a burden. And in Microsoft, down in Mecklenburg County, they run in the mode run to fail. Okay, so they just let the equipment burn out and they have another rack, they just replace it. Now you can come back and say that's a landfill nightmare, but they find that's much more economically feasible than having to run a lot of water through that pipe. So if you sit back and think about the Northern Virginia dominance, it's huge right now, but their capacity. Okay, people are still want to build in the Commonwealth. They still want to come back and take advantage of the opportunity. I'm saying, look, we should strongly consider our region from the Allegheny Highlands to Franklin County to Berry Hill and Danville to the summits in Franklin County. We could set ourselves up to be, a really high-tech hotspot because A, it's going to spawn a lot of jobs, plus a lot of entrepreneurs will want to be around it because of the latency. This is what the map looks like in Virginia right now, and you can see how many are clustered up there, over 150. You can see the names that are running these components. There's the Microsoft one. Lumos has built one out, but quite frankly, we don't have a lot in this region. And a lot of times the reason that we don't have a lot in this region is because we didn't have the connectivity. We have the connectivity now with all the dark fiber. So hopefully over time that we'll take advantage of this and we'll look at opportunities to bring this in. But my recommendation is you go in with both eyes wide open, because with it there's a lot of good, but there's also a lot of resources that go with it. Are you guys APCO or Dominion? Dominion, okay. Yeah. So, let's think about workforce advantages in this area. So when you sit back and consider, if I'm Microsoft and I'm going out and looking to put a remote area in, and you've got really good talent, you've got good data centers, why am I going to look at you? Okay, because your workforce is going to be about 15% cheaper than it is on the larger cities. I'm going to look at the internships I can place. This is things that Go Virginia has been doing, and then the number of jobs that we can place. When you build those ecosystems through the community college, you set yourself up. Virginia our region is a net exporter of talent. Okay, in Region 2, which once again goes from Allegheny Highlands to Blacksburg to Appomattox to the West Virginia State border, we have the largest state public and private universities, Virginia Tech and Liberty. We also have 7 regional colleges. We have 4 incredible community colleges. Now, community colleges do a wonderful job of keeping people in the community, which is good, 90%. The regional colleges, we usually keep about 60 to 70%. Liberty and Tech, about 95% leave. And if we could figure out some way to change that math and just get 2% of those to stay, imagine what we could do from an innovation standpoint, what we could do from an economic development standpoint.